This week on Saturday Roundup, a High Court judge rescinds his own ruling in a scandal that is rocking the legal fraternity, while the US has slammed brakes on visa services from Zimbabwe, blaming overstayers. Then there's former MP Obert Manduna. He gets jail time for fraud, just as platinum miners cry foul over millions of dollars withheld by the Zimbabwean government. And a Chinese businesswoman faces charges of externalizing almost $1 million, allegedly spirited out of the country. Stick around for these stories. They have drama, money trails, and plenty to unpack. Before we dive in, I owe you an apology. It's been about 3 weeks since our last roundup. I lost a mother figure, basically. And after losing an aunt, a brother, and a cousin, and then another aunt in the space of about circa 90 days, I really needed a moment to deal with it all. But I have missed you, every single one of you. The kind commenters who spare us on, the thoughtful ones who always share their perspectives, and yes, even you, the mean ones. I missed you. We're back, and let's get into it. We start in Harare's High Court, where Justice Neva Katillo has done something rare and pretty much unsettling. He has set aside his own judgment just 10 days after delivering it. Now, I know judgments get set aside all the time, but this is a scenario where a judge has given a ruling, a verdict, a ruling. It's a ruling, right, by a judge, or judgment, right? And then he comes back and he rescinds it. The case itself, it's a dispute between a Bulgarian company, Technoimpics JSC or something like that, and a local outfit accused of hijacking the property. The property in question is Bath Mansions flats in Avondale. That's like proper prime real estate. That's, proper real dollars there. But here's where the issue is. Advocate Thabani Mpofu, you might remember him, right? Advocate Fulcrum. He was recorded as having appeared for the applicant in this particular judgment, except he didn't. Thabani Mpofu never even set foot in court. Mpofu called the ruling totally made up stuff. And here's where it gets, even murkier. The judgment, I think it was delivered on July 28th. It reads as if that the lawyers actually showed up, for both parties, and they argued the matter in open court, but no hearing date was ever recorded. Both Mpofu and Technoimpics lawyers, they confirmed this. The case was still pending and set for September 15. That's where it was supposed to be in court. So the judge basically made up an entire judgment and given it out. There's no hearing, there are no arguments, and yet you now have a written judgment naming the lawyers. Justice Katillo has also then now recused himself from the matter, but he could or even should face a Judicial Services Commission inquiry. And here's the irony of it all, right? Lawyers say that this proves why he failed public judicial interviews in 2021, I think. Yes, he did fail them. So before he became a judge, there were these interviews and he failed dismally. But despite failing, he was still appointed by President Mnangagwa. And it makes you wonder, how many other rulings has this judge made up in the same way, especially for people who are not as prominent, who don't have the resources to challenge it, who just bring a case before the courts, there's some fraud or whatever, and bang, a ruling has been done. And as a note, we are investigating several issues of properties being illegally sold and judgments made for the thieves. You remember there was that High Court, that famous judge who lost his house, eventually got it back. But there's a scandal in Zimbabwe right now where you basically have widows losing their homes, criminals getting duplicate and fake title deeds, and then when it goes to court, it's just brushed through and the criminals get to keep the property. That investigation's been ongoing even while I was away with colleagues, and it's coming soon. But that was pretty much a shocker. A judge making up an entire judgment out of thin air. From the High Court to the US Embassy, Washington has hit pause on all routine visa services in Zimbabwe. Tourist visas, student visas, business visas, immigrant visas, none. The whole lot has been suspended. Why? Well, the line is it's because of overstay rates. The US says about just under 11%, 10.57% of Zimbabweans with B1, B2 visas, they overstay. That's about 709 people last year or something of that sort. Student visa holders are also under the microscope, and there's even a diplomatic twist to this particular sanction. Apparently, Washington is unhappy that Zimbabwe won't sign a safe third country agreement. Now, you remember there was something in the news about Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, not long ago, where America is deporting people who are waiting on asylum, or people who've been convicted, or who are illegally there. And if their own country won't take them back, they send them to Swaziland. So there's a bit of a mess there, because Zimbabwe was offered the same thing and they said no. As is, only Eswatini, Rwanda, and South Sudan have agreed. Zimbabwe refuses. And the whispers behind are that because Zimbabwe wouldn't agree to take in American criminals, or people refused American visas or asylum or whatever, Zimbabwe wouldn't take them, and America's upset. The embassy, however, will still process diplomatic visas, but for everyone else, it's a closed door. And it comes just as the Trump administration reinstates a travel ban for 19 countries and launches a pilot program forcing Malawians and Zambians, for the meantime, to post a bond of about $15,000. So before you travel and before you get a visa, you need to put this bond of $15,000 that you will get back when you leave. In other words, that famous US immigration wall, it isn't just physical anymore. It's now policy, and Zimbabwe is well on the menu. In Bulawayo, former CCC MP Obert Manduna, he's now behind bars. 4.5 years for fraud. 6 months have been suspended if he stays clean for 5 years. Another 24 months, they will be suspended if he pays back $5,900 by October 30 of this year. You might be wondering, what did he do? Well, here's what happened. Manduna posed as an agent, selling a stand in Kodri Park in Bulawayo. He claimed that he had power of attorney, but he didn't. The real owner of that stand hadn't authorized the sale, and the property, at that point, it was actually already repossessed by the city council. So he took the money from somebody called Situlisi Wesbanda, if I recall that correctly, for quite a long time. It happened between October 2020 and February 2022. Prosecutors, they say that nothing has been recovered, and they also warned when he appeared in court that he might actually, reoffend. The defense, were defending this former MP. They say that he's a respected community leader and that he is one of the people who are on the forefront of fighting drugs in the country. They painted him as this anti-drug advocate. The court went for a sentence that left some room for rehabilitation, you could say, but this case has a subplot. Like all things in Zimbabwe, there is a subplot. Provincial magistrate Eva Matura, who once denied Manduna bail, is facing her own criminal abuse of duty charges for allegedly arranging for Manduna to be released without proper paperwork. I didn't see that coming when it happened. I was pretty much shocked, but hey, it's Bulawayo justice, where even the referees, sometimes they face penalties. In the mining sector, platinum producers are fuming. The government owes them millions of dollars under the foreign currency retention rules. Zimbabwe's got this all set up with different currencies and zig and this and that. You sell a bit, but basically exporters keep only 70% of their earnings in forex. The rest of it is paid in local currency, in zig. Except that since January this year, the government hasn't been paying the local currency portion at all. So exporters, for instance, maybe Zimbabwe, Mimosa mines, when they sell something, only 70% is what they can get, but they're not getting the other 30%. These aren't small numbers, by the way. PGM exports were worth about 690 million in the first half of the year. Deputy Finance Minister Mnangagwa, he admits that the government fell well behind, blaming cash flow problems in the first quarter. But mining analysts say that the strategy to balance the book, right? Or they basically say it's a strategy to balance the books and keep the zig as stable as possible by starving payments of the local currency. They say it's just starving the industry. Platinum is Zimbabwe's second biggest mineral export after gold, so it's very critical for the country and for the economy and for jobs and all and sundry that follows. But it's not just platinum. Gold producers have had the same complaint for a long time. The retention rules, they cut their income and they force them to take an overvalued local currency. Unless your name is Scott Sakupwanya, then you get all of your money paid for. The bottom line is that in trying to protect the zig, the government might actually be mining away investor confidence instead. Although to be fair, there hasn't been a lot of that for quite a long time, because our policies change like this on a whim, and you could just imagine a scenario where if you sell your car, the government determines how much of a percentage you get in what currency and how much is paid to you. But then they just decide that little portion that they owe you in local currency, they are not going to pay. Chinese businesswoman Sun Limin was arrested for allegedly externalizing over $880,000. That's very close to $1 million. Prosecutors say between January 24 and July of this year, she used informal money transfer systems, Mukando, to buy goods from China without the Reserve Bank's approval. The goods came in supposedly through Forbes border post in Mutare. Forbes is in Mutare, right? Yeah, it is. That is where Mnangagwa, in movie style, jumped the border running away from Mugabe when he was fired as vice president. But back to our story. Customs paperwork allegedly shows a pattern of imports. The state says she tried to disguise the source and the destination of the funds, knowing that they were likely the proceeds of crime. She's now out on bail. You can guess the amount if you like. $500. That's a bail. Her passport's been surrendered and her address is now fixed. The charges are in relation to violating the Exchange Control Act and the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act. It's one of those stories. You feel sorry for her. She's an investor. She's trying to get stock and this and that, but you can't get it if you go via the Reserve Bank channels. But at the same time, this is a serious crime, because if convicted, the sentence could be heavy. But in Zimbabwe's justice system, the final verdict, it often depends more, or rather it depends on more than just the evidence. Kind of depends on what strings you can pull. But like I said, it's still sad, we just spoke about investor confidence when it came to mining and people having to resort to other means to fast track payment. But anyway, that's the Saturday Roundup with Maynard. I am glad to be back, and we're not just picking up from here. We'll be catching up on the big stories that we missed during the break. Expect a lot more stories and episodes as we dig into those weeks that I was away. Thank you so much for all the guys that sent messages. I must have received about just over 200 messages. Are you okay? It's been a while. What do you think about what's happening with Chinamasa posting and then deleting? Where are we with Kudata Gire? Where are we with Succession? The stuff that you guys like. So we'll do a catch up on all of those things as we go. But until next time, stay informed, stay sharp, and as always, keep asking questions. If you don't want, come to Tag We will ask the questions for you and answer them for you. Cheers.